Welcome back, y'all, to Harmon Homestead. I'm inside. It is way too hot outside to be filming. It is 90-something degrees, and we are tired, and it's the middle of the afternoon. So I come inside. I'm in front of one of my canning shelves here. Welcome back to the channel. We're in rural Alabama. If you are new, hope you learned something. We're homesteading full-time. So I want to talk to you guys about homesteading, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I did a chicken video on Americanas the same way, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I talked about what I liked about the chickens, what I didn't care for, and what was just terrible in my opinion about them. And I'm gonna do the same thing with homesteading. So the good points of homesteading. Watch my channel, any part of it. I'm promoting homesteading, whether it be growing your own food, you know what's in your food, it's cheaper. Yes, it is. If you do it a certain way, it's cheaper to grow your own food. Low technology, lots of plants, do the best you can, eat every bit of it. That's how you save money. Animals, you learn animal husbandry. You have a special bond. You're at one with the land. You're at one with the weather. You understand weather patterns. You're sustainable. You don't depend on people. Homesteading is good for 5,000 reasons, and I'm an advocate for it, and I hope everyone becomes a homesteader. But I have due diligence to tell you that there's some setbacks to this. So if you're new and you're watching me, we've got a lot of new people on this channel. It's growing. If you are considering homesteading, you don't need to go into this blind thinking that it's just all sunshine and roses, because it's not. It's really not. This is the toughest thing I've ever done. So let's start with the bad. The bad and the ugly, I'm going to kind of loop together. You can pick out what you think is worse. If you homestead, you're going to have to live in the country. That's the only way you're going to have land of this capacity, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to be in the country. Wherever in the U.S. you are, you're going to be rural. Your environment around you, and just say New Mexico, it's going to be a lot different than the rural woods here of Alabama. You are moving in to these animals' home. You're in their territory. When you live in town, if you see a wild animal come through, they're in your territory. But out here in the woods where it's rural, I'm in theirs. That's just how I look at it. There is no anything that's going to stop a coyote coming through my pasture. There's nothing that's going to stop him being in my yard. There's nothing that's going to stop him from trying to attack my chickens. You have to know that you move into wild animal territory. I've had someone on here say that they have bears in their backyards trying to kill their chickens. We have all different kinds of viewers that live in a diverse climate, literally. So take it for what it's worth. You've got to know about the animals that's around you where you live, and the terrain. For instance, we have rattlesnakes here in rural Alabama. We have rattlesnakes, copperheads, and water moccasins. Those are the top 3 around here. We have them all the time. I had one in my corn last year, a rattlesnake. They're very, very common. You don't want to see them. I personally don't. I don't want to be around it, but unfortunately, it's going to be there because it's his territory. A friend of mine yesterday was leaving, going home, and she ran over a rattlesnake, and I want you to see the size of this rattlesnake, just on a dirt road, a mile away from where I live. So that right there is what you're going to have to encounter. If you live in rural Alabama or you live in the South, you're definitely going to have to encounter that, and probably a lot of people out west. You've got different kinds, but things like that, you have to think about. Bears, bobcats, you have coyotes, snakes, even guys, like the big animals are predators, and they can cause harm to your animals. They can cause harm to you, but you don't have to encounter it as much like the little ones. And what I mean by that is a lot of people that live in old country homes have, or even a new home, will get spiders. A lot of times you will have brown recluses or black widows. We don't have problems with spiders, but what we have never had a problem with, but my grandmother, who lives right across the road, her house has always had a problem with scorpions. Always. I don't know why her house has had scorpions. Mine does not, but the other night, me and my husband killed our first scorpion in here. So you have stuff like that when you live out in the woods. You're going to have field mice. You don't think of things like that being bad. This can cause damage to your property. A lot of people have trouble in their homes with these. We don't. We have outside cats. Problem's gone. That's a very good thing to have around your house if you've got a problem with vermin like that, or even ground squirrels. People with chickens have mice get in their chicken coops all the time. All the time. We've never had that problem, but I see that constantly. People asking about what to do with rats and mice in their chicken coops. Thankfully, we don't have that. You've got raccoons and possums. That's going to be your two biggest predators, and maybe a fox. Foxes sometimes will be your top three for chickens. But the number one thing, neighborhood dogs. This is something else that's bad about homesteading. If you're going to live rural, the chance of you having leash laws is going to be slim to none in a lot of towns, outside of towns where you're going to move. So we've covered animals. Now let's talk about wild animals. Let's talk about domesticated. You're going to have to deal with this. Guys, it's terrible on our county road. We've got dogs that just run everywhere. And, I grew up with mine running everywhere. But when you have livestock, it's a different story. The shoe's on the other foot now. I don't want animals tearing up my livestock or tearing up my property. And they can. They can cause you to wreck. We witnessed that this week, just with dogs. It's very prevalent here in the country where everything just runs free and wild. You'll have stray cats. If your cat is not fixed, if you have a cat, you will soon have 10 cats. That's how it goes in the country. People don't fix their animals. And a lot of times, people do not have animals fixed in the country because they can't fend for themselves if they're an outside animal and they're fixed, like a cat. You don't want a tomcat around the house that's not fixed, or that's fixed, that's running around outside. Not here, because there's tomcats all the time in our yard, and they'll get in fights. You don't want that. You want him to be able to at least fend for himself if he's going to be outside doing a job. So it's a lot to consider just with animals. Okay, let's talk about what else about homesteading, living in the country. Now, I'm just talking about the lifestyle. Out here in the country, it's a small county that I live in. It's a rural county. Not a heavy populace. We pay tax, of course, everyone pays tax. Do you know how many times a year our roads are conditioned and kept up? Well, the roads get graveled and paved over, I'd say every 10 years maybe. We just had them done a couple years ago. There's already potholes the size of this rocker sitting in it. You're going to have to deal with that with transportation. As far as the grass on the sides of the road, we don't have road maintenance at all. It gets bush hogged, if you're lucky, once a year, and they've not done it yet this year. The grass on the side of the road, when I pull out of my gravel driveway, is so tall, you have to get out in the paved road to see if anybody's coming. Now my husband's been cutting it, but on down, it's just fields. We live in fields, pretty much. People don't keep this up down here. Neighbors used to. Neighbors would do it, but the neighbors have gotten older. They can't do it anymore. The good old guys that were here that was taking care of this land when no one else would have moved off or gotten to the point they can't take care of it anymore, and people just don't. They just don't. The new people that's moved in, you're going to have to deal with that too. If you're a homesteader wanting to homestead, and you're moving to a rural county and you think that it's going to be the Waltons on every street corner or every dirt road or every gravel road, that's not so. There's probably going to be more new people around you than you're one of them. They're going to be new too. We have so many new neighbors. I've talked about this over and over. Up and down this county road, people are moving from all over the U.S., including California, to this area because they're trying to get out of these states and cities. They're trying to get rural. So you're going to have to deal with a very new populace. So if you're just knocking on someone's door asking for help, they may not know themselves. The old timers have moved on. Or either their kids are not living here anymore. Very few kids have come back to the country here to live. In fact, I'm the only one that I know of. And I'm not a kid. So it's tough. But you can adjust to this stuff. It's just stuff I want you to be aware of. Really aware. Some ugly parts of homesteading. Really, really ugly in my opinion. You're going to have the nastiest job you could imagine. You're constantly sweating. You're constantly dirty. You know why? Either you're canning over hot steam, you're outside constantly in the dirt, the mud, the rain, the drought. Right now, we're in a drought. I would definitely say we're in a drought. We've not had rain for 2 weeks. It's a little bit cloudy right now. I'm praying that it will rain because I've got 800 feet of corn planted and there's not a drop of rain. It's tasseling and silking. The cobs are not going to make it. The corn it looks like wheat. It's so bad. I've got new corn right behind it I can't even side dress. You know, you've got to battle the weather too. But you're constantly out in the dirt, the muck, the mud. If it does rain, especially if you've got animals, you're going to have to be out in the elements taking care of it. You'll take a shower, take a bath, and then you'll be dirty in 2 hours from doing something else. It's constant work. You'll never be clean. Your house will never be clean. I try to keep mine clean. You have to clean it daily to stay on top of it, just from dirt. Now, we have outside dogs that we bring inside at night. That's where a lot of the dirt comes from, but I've never met anybody in the country that didn't want to get a dog at some point. You're going to want a dog, and you may keep him just outside, but either way, you're going to track in mud and muck and dirt on you, your clothes, the sweat, the heat. The heat. Let's get on the weather. That's the ugly part. If you live in the South or out West, especially Texas, bless it, heat, 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 heat. The humidity down here in the South is so bad. I saw somebody on YouTube the other day was saying, she said, it's so bad, it's 90 degrees here. I thought 90, I'm glad for 90. We've been at 96, 98. I mean, we're hot, it's hot. And then when you've got the humidity levels, it's like 100 and something is the heat index. When you go outside, that's what I'm saying about being clean, you immediately start sweating. Your clothes will be damp. It's terrible. You never can get clean. Somebody asked me this week, they said, why in every video is your hair down? Because it's usually wet on top of my head. That's how I go out there and I'm letting it air dry and then I'll put it back up, let it down. That's what I do all day to keep cool, mainly. If not, it's just a hot bun on top of my head. It's tough. If you bake a lot and cook a lot, it's different in this humidity. The weather, guys. The heat's the worst part. Second part would be drought. Drought's the most impacting part. So the whole thing with homesteading, growing your own food. When you grow your own food and you are dependent on that crop to survive. This is just one of my shelves. We're getting a little low. I'm emptying out cans fast and furious so I can can more stuff and have room for that. Guys, if the weather is not conducive and you're planting in fields or you do not have water set up to it some way, somehow, you're in a mess. There went your food. I always say to have backups. Everybody should, but everybody in modern times lives close enough to town that they can go buy food. However, if you're trying to save money and do it by hand, this is bad, just like our corn. Now, I am a huge advocate for raised bed gardening. I mean a 20 by 30 or larger. Fill it in the best way you can. I like no-till method. We've got a topsoil bed, we've got compost beds, we've got everything on demand. You don't have to go buy a raised bed, you don't have to get something fancy. Have some wood planks put up, okay, and have dirt in it. It will grow and grow you food. Where it's near a water hose, you can funnel water to it, you'll be okay. I've watered my gardens every day for the past 2 weeks, and before that it was probably every 2 to 3 days up here at my house where they're not in pasture area. And my water bill went up $8 this month, I believe. The amount of food, $7, the amount of food that I've harvested off that garden makes up for it. So everybody says, your water bill is going to be worse. This is getting back to the good. No, it's not really. This is starting to knock off on your grocery bill. And it's so much better for you. And you know what it is? And it's better mentally, physically, I mean, just all the way around. It's just good for you, okay? It's good to get out here and do something wholesome by hand. So we'll round it off with that, something good. Last thing, this is an oddball thing, but I do want to tell you, if you have a well, this is promoted so much on YouTube, or it was a couple of years ago. Everybody said, get a well, get a well, get a well. Do know that if it gets dry and if it gets hot, you know, that well can go dry. So be very, very cautious with that. I personally would have some different alternatives, but it's called city water, even though it's not even a city. But we do have water funneled in here, but we also live right beside a creek where if something happened and it was an off-grid situation for any reason, we have a running source of water. Ponds aren't going to do you good, okay? A running source of water is ideal. Make sure you're not in a low-lying area. I've seen this creek flood many times to where it crossed the county road up 3 feet the side of a house that was down by that creek. I'm high up on a hill. We're in a very mountainous area. We're at the very tip of the Appalachian Mountains. So there's creeks, there's hills, there's mountains. It's beautiful, but you need to be nature aware and climate terrain aware. It all is cohesive together. The weather, the animals, the terrain, everything. You've got to take this into consideration. Also, if you have power, 99.9% of you will have electricity in your home unless you're specifically doing off-grid. But regardless, if you have electricity, you will have power outages all the time out here in the country. It's very, very common. Thunderstorm comes through, you will lose power even though no damage is on your property. We have so many tall pine trees down here. You cannot look out my window without, it looks like a forest. Every window around me is just wooded. I'm in the woods. Trees will fall somewhere down the power line and knock out the power. We've been through a Hurricane Zeta, several years ago. The eye of the storm literally crossed right where we live. And I think it was within a mile or two. We had significant damages, probably, I think it was 20-something large pines just on our small property that was down. They were in our yard, they were down our driveway, in our pasture. You're going to have to deal with that. And not only electricity being out, that was 7, 8 days, 10 days, I can't remember now. It was just awful. And we were not equipped at the time, but we also had the damage to deal with. You have to go out there and clean up those trees. They're not, we don't have a tree service. Not really down here. The men that run the homes are the tree service. Everybody's got a chainsaw. Everybody's got a bush hog. And that's why I was saying they used to. But it's a mandatory. You must have a chainsaw and know how to use it appropriately and be able to take care of it, because you're going to have trees down if you live in a wooded area homesteading. There's a lot to consider, guys. A lot. So, overall, 100%, I recommend everybody to do it. I think your life will be better. I think it'll be simpler. I think it'll be just wholesome and good. There's so many wonderful things. I look behind me. I know that I put that food up. I've got a sense of self-satisfaction, self-accomplishment. I know I did it by hand. I didn't have to go buy it. And you get independence because independence from the man. You don't have to go buy all your stuff all the time. You can at least do something for yourself. But there are some bad and ugly points to homesteading. And the worst thing, I'm going to round it off with this. If you have animals, I see people go out all the time and want animals. Guys, animals are a lot of work. You're going to deal with animals passing. You're going to deal with birth. You're going to have a lot of things that's going to be wonderful and sad at the same time. But the ugliest part of animals, all animals have, believe it or not, and you don't think about it, poop, okay? If you have 100 chickens, this stuff piles up quick. Hogs, cows, if you think you're going to get some cows and it'll be just a beautiful green pasture, no. There's going to be cow patties everywhere, all in that pasture. If you get goats, if you get whatever, every animal has this excrement, and at some point, you're going to have to deal with that. Either you're going to walk through it, you're going to touch it. If your chickens are in a confined coop, you're going to have to walk through it, touch it. The first thing chickens do is you put a water in there and they roost on top of the water. They poop at night all down the side of their water. People do not understand how nasty it is. It really is nasty. That's one reason we love to free range. That way everything's not cooped up and it kind of disperses it. But guess what? When you free range, just say chickens, turkeys, ducks, then it starts becoming to where it's on your patio instead of in the coop. It's a lot of work. It's not as bad if you've got 3 to 6 chickens, you're okay. But the more animals you collect or whatever you're doing with animals, the bigger the mess is. And that's the ugliest part to homesteading to me, is literally the mess. So anyways, guys, I still hope you homestead. I just want you to be aware. put a lot of thought into it before you make a huge life-changing decision like this. I think you will thoroughly enjoy it and never look back. We'll see you guys next time on Harmon Homestead.